Hi, hello guys, this is Vijay, biology lecturer from Alibaug Junior College. As you know that we have started our NEET series. Based on that we are discussing about each and every chapter in detail from the subject biology and chemistry. And followed by we are going to discuss about the previous year question papers and the question paper model. In that category today we are going to discuss about NEET Biology Unit 2 Biological Classification. In that particular chapter we are going to discuss about the topic called angiosperms. Let's start. Yes, let us talk about the habit and habitat and also the distribution of angiosperms in detail. Yes, angiosperms, these are nothing but the first seed and flower bearing plants, and this is the one of the most largest the kingdom present under the category of the entire plant kingdom. And this particular angiosperms, it has more than 12,500 genera and 250,000 species. Okay, so the most important and the largest particular group of the plants species, that is called the angiosperms. And these angiosperms are the most dominant and also economically the most important class which is present under the category of the plant kingdom. And angiosperms, they could show the wide range of its physical appearances. They include in the form of trees, they include in the form of shrubs, they include in the form of vines, they include in the form of herbs. And most of them, they are adapted according to the environment which are given to. And the angiosperms, they are most largest class in the plant kingdom, and also they are the well developed adaptive features. Some of the angiosperms, they are the land form, the primarily the primitive type of angiosperms are usually land form, and gradually some of the angiosperms, they are adapted to survive in the water, and they are said to be the hydrophytes. Say for example, like hydrilla is one of the best example, and water lilies, lotus, these all are the few example. So angiosperms could be seen in the form of hydrophytes, land form, and some of them are surviving in xerotic condition like desert condition, and some of them they could survive in the extreme cold region. So the particular class of the plant kingdom that could survive in the various conditions of the environment, and they themselves could adapt according to the environment which are given to them. Okay, and many angiosperms, they are like xerophyte type, and they are nothing but they could able to survive under the scarcity of water, especially in desert region, and they could able to bloom in the desert according to the season. When the season that could change into shower, the particular plant classes that could be able to bloom, and during the short favorable season they could grow and they could develop flowers, they could shed the seeds, and these seeds are further developing into their new generation, right? And some of the angiosperms, they could survive as in the form of epiphytes. Epiphytes are nothing but this type of the plant species, they could survive on the other plants. They can able to grow on the other plants, but they do not take food or water from them, but they could survive on the other plant like orchid is one of the best example. And few angiosperm species, they are acting as a parasite. So parasitic mode of angiosperms also can be seen, parasite form. And the best example for this parasitic form is Cuscuta is one of the best example, and they could survive on the other plant and training over the other plant. And some of them are acting as a saprophyte, like coral root in orchid is one of the best example. And angiosperms species, angiosperms class, that particular type of plants, they could survive in extreme temperature. Say for example, like extreme hot springs, like sulfur hot springs lake, or the sea water, or the stream around 60 degrees Celsius, these particular angiosperms, they can able to survive. And also altitude is not major factor to impact the growth of angiosperm. I mean, few angiosperms, they are still surviving at a higher altitude, especially in the Himalaya or Himalayan region, around 6,000 meters above the sea level, they could able to survive. And some of the angiosperms which are reported even at the zero climatic condition, like in Antarctica, and even minus climatic condition. This is what the habitat and the distribution of angiosperm. So angiosperm is one of the most important, economically important, and also the most largest class present under the category of plant kingdom. So this is about plant kingdom. So this is about its habit and habitat. Now let us talk about the development of flower. Development of flower and fruit habitat. Angiosperm is one of the the sporophytic plant. They could bear flowers, and which is the site of sexual reproduction. Flower which is modified into shoot, and the flower is the most essential and important part which is involving for sexual reproduction in angiosperm. And the flower that could bear sepals, petals, stamens and carpels that could arise from the thalamus. What are these sepals, petals, stamens and carpels? Let us discuss in detail. Stamens. Stamens are nothing but androecium. This is also called as androecium is nothing but the male reproductive part which is present in the flower, that is called stamen. Similarly, carpels, these are nothing but the gynoecium. Gynoecium is the female reproductive part which is present in the flower, and these both are the most essential part which is present in the flower. They could involve for the sexual reproduction. There are some non-essential parts which are present in the flower. They are said to be the sepals and petals. The sepals which is also called as calyx, and the petals which is also called as corolla. Now talking about the sepals, sepals are usually they are green in color, and the petals which are multiple in color and showy in nature, and there are of course some functions for petals. Due to the presence of different colors of petals, they could able to attract the insect species, and like honeybee, fruit flies, etc. And these could help for the cross pollination that could happen in the angiosperm class under plant kingdom. Okay, now we will talk about stamen. What is stamen? Stamen, which is nothing but the androecium or the male reproductive part, and the stamen which consisting of an elongated or a long stalk like structure, that is called a filament, and it is at the tip flattened globoid structure that is called anther. And there are two anther, a pair of anther which is present at the tip of the stamen, and these anther that includes the minute microscopic the male gametes which are also called as pollen grains. And carpel, which is present the basal part that is swollen into the ovary in the female reproductive part, that is called gynecium. And the carpel that could looks like a flower vase structure, and the flower vase which shows that at the base it is enlarged, and at the top of the part which is elongated. And this particular the gynecium, structure of gynecium, the basal part which is elongated, the basal part which is enlarged, that is called as the ovary, and the middle elongated or a thin stalk like structure, that is called style, and the upper terminal which has small minute pores that could help for the entry of the male gamete or the pollen grains, and this particular part of the gynecium which is called as stigma. Now the ovary, the structure of ovary that could contain ovules, and these ovules will fuse with the pollen grain during the sexual reproduction, and they could exchange the nucleus which is present in between them, which is present inside them. Now let us talk about the functions of the flower in angiosperm. Yes, as I said, the flower is the most important and essential part which is present in angiosperms plants. They are involving for the most important and predominant function, that is called sexual reproduction. It bears male sex organs, that is called andrecium, which is also called a stamen, and the female reproductive organ, that is called gynecium, which is also called as carpels. And ovary which is present in the female reproductive system or the gynecium, after fertilization they could ripen into fruit, and which contain seeds present inside, and that could help for the responsible for the continuation of the particular race. Now talking about the stamen, each stamen that could bear anther, as I said already, and this anther is a group of 4 pollen sacs, and each pollen sacs which contain the microscopic multiple pollen mother cell or the the male gametes. And the ovary which contain the ovule, as I said, and that could be born on placentae, and ovule which is also called as the megasporangium, which is enclosed by 1 or 2 integuments. There are 2 different layers. In the nucleus of ovule, 1 megaspore mother cell that could appear, which after meiosis that could gives rise into 4 haploid megaspores, 4 similar haploid megaspores. And one of the megaspore from this particular embryo sac, that is called the female gametophyte, and the embryo sac that could bear 8 nuclei, and the micropolar egg apparatus which contain 2 synergids and 1 egg cell. The synergids which is helping for the nourishment of this egg cell, and the lower 3 cells which are called as the antipodal cell, and the central cell which is contain the 2 pair that is called the polar nuclei. So this is about the the structure of the female gametophyte and the male gametophyte. Now let us talk about pollination. What is the meaning of pollination? What is the meaning of pollination? So pollination is the process of the pollen grain that would migrate to the stigma of carpel by the process that is called pollination. How the pollen grain that is migrating to the stigma, how the pollen grains which are carried into the tip of the stigma or the tip of the carpel, how it is possible. This pollination is possible by two method, that is called self-pollination and cross-pollination. So, self-pollination that could occur in the similar plant body and the similar plant thallus, where the male and female reproductive part which is present in the single flower. The cross-pollination that could occurs with different types of agents, and these agents are helping for the pollination of these agents are helping for the pollination. That means what? The entry of pollen grain into the stigma. Say for example, like yes, there are different types of agents which are involving for this cross pollination in angiosperms plants. For example, like wind, water, insects, birds, bats, or even the human being. I mean, there are two major factors which are involving for the cross pollination. Might be the abiotic factor and the biotic factor. And insect pollinated plants also could be possible in the angiosperms, which are also called as entomophilous. Entomophilous is nothing but the pollination occurs due to the insects, and insects are the mainly responsible for the cross pollination, and they could get in return of the nectar and the edible pollen. This is about the pollination. Now let us talk about the fertilization. After the pollination, the next process that leads to fertilization in angiosperm. Say for example, once the pollen grain that is germinates and that could enter into the stigma, that could develop a pollen tube which carries the two sperm nuclei, which are also called as the male gamete, and the tube nucleus. One of the male gamete that would fuse with the egg cell which is present in the ovary at the basal part of the carpel, and they could form into the zygote. Zygote is nothing but how the male gamete of the pollen sperm nuclei which is fusing with the egg nuclei which is present in the carpel. The other male gamete that could fuse with two polar nuclei to constitute triploid primary endosperm nucleus. This phenomena is sometimes called as the double fertilization. The primary endosperm nucleus that could give rise to the triploid endosperm. Now zygote that could develop into the embryo. So this entire process is called fertilization. So in the fertilization, how the pollen nuclei which is fusing with the egg nuclei, and that could develop into the zygote. Now talking about the rest of the part which is present in the flower, like sepals, petals, stamen, style, stigma, which all what happen, they withdraw from the plant body at the time of the fruit formation. Fruit, what is fruit? Fruit is nothing but it is a ripening part of the ovary. Ovary, when it is getting to be ripened, that is developing into fruit. And the seed which contain the dormant embryo along with the food material which is present inside, that is called the endosperm, are also called as the cotyledon. So once the fruit that could ripen and they fell on the surface of the soil, the ripening part of the fruit that is decomposed and the seed that would emerge out. Once the seed is emerge out with the producing of a single leaf, that is called monocotyledon, or which is producing double leaf, that is called as dicotyledon. Yes, now talking about this, what is the meaning of these monocots and dicots? These are the further subclasses of angiosperm, which are also called as the dicotyledon and monocotyledon. Okay. Dicotyledons that could bear two cotyledon when they are seeds. Similarly, monocotyledon that could develop only one cotyledon in their seed. So there are one more way of identifying these monocotyledon type of plants and dicotyledon type of plants. Monocotyledon type of plants, they could develop adventitious roots. Similarly, the dicotyledon plants, they could develop adventitious as well as the tap roots system. Okay, the dicots which are abundant than the monocots when we are comparing with the genera species. More than 2 lakh species of the dicots which are present and 50,000 species of monocots which are being described. Many of them are useful, like monocot, like bamboo, one of the example, grasses. They are the most important producer in the food chain of the entire globe or the earth. And sugarcane, one of the economically important plant, bananas, lilies, tulip, orchids, cereals. Cereals, say for example like wheat, paddy, maize, barley, palms, ruscus, asparagus, onion, garlic. So these all are the few examples for monocots or the monocotyledon. They are most important and also economically important to the human being. Whereas talking about the dicots which includes for the plants of all the types of trees, shrubs, herbs, mostly they are edible like fruits and vegetables like apple, peach, cherry, cotton, carrot, melon, watermelon, cucumber, and also they could able to provide wood for making furnitures, spices which is involving for the cooking purpose, pulses, fruits, vegetables, beverages like tea plant, coffee plant, and also several ornamental plants for decorating the indoor and outdoor. Okay, so these are the different examples of dicotyledon. Okay, this particular chapter we will continue with one more video. Until then, thank you guys.